Is South Africa literally poking the bear, being America or the United States? And will they receive the mauling that they deserve? And then I want to ask, the greatest thing that Jesus said he would be looking for when he returns. Now this week, the ambassador of South Africa to the United States got kicked out of the country because he made a statement that Donald Trump is leading a global white supremacist movement. The reason why they were against him going in the first place is because he was very pro-Iran. And you know, Iran is like a dynamite stick to America at the moment. And he was pro-Hamas, pro-Palestinian, anti-Israel. And recently, the Johannesburg Council wanted to pass a resolution where they could rename Santon Drive. And they wanted to call it after a Palestinian Hamas terrorist. If they change that address, because the American embassy is in that road, and it would then have to have a Hamas terrorist Palestinian fighter on their letterhead. It would be regrettable if South Africa did this, because the Americans would probably close the embassy in Johannesburg. That would affect South African people on a negative way. Well, good morning and welcome to Timeout this morning. My name is Jack Vint. I trust where you are that you're well, that you're safe, and that you at least got a hot cup of coffee with you on this Saturday morning. Now the question I want to ask is South Africa literally poking the bear, being America or the United States? And will they soon be mauled? But let me put it another way. Is the ANC, because it's really them that's doing these things, poking the bear of America and the United States and Donald Trump? And will they receive the mauling that they deserve? I'm going to say something about that soon. And then I want to ask you this morning, and the greatest thing that Jesus said he would be looking for when he returns, what would that be? Now, South Africa has been in the limelight again for the wrong reasons recently. It seems that, namely the ANC politicians cannot stop making mistakes and shooting themselves in the foot. But the sad part is they're dragging the rest of South Africa with them. And that is very sad if you're a South African who has no say in their decisions. Now this week, Ephraim Rasool, the Honorable, who was the ambassador of South Africa to the United States, got kicked out of the country, gave him 72 hours, because Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State of the United States of America, said that he was a race baiter and that he hated Americans. Now, Ephraim Rasool used to be a diplomat representing South Africa many years ago. And the ANC, because of all the mess they made, decided that he was the right person to go and make amends because of his contacts in America. And apparently most of the GNU partners, or opposition partners, or partners I should say, were against him going because of, but before I get there, the ANC, despite the opposition, insisted that he goes, and he did go. And then he got kicked out because he made a statement that on a webinar publicly that Donald Trump is leading a global white supremacist movement. Wow. Now this is the diplomat representing South Africa. The word diplomat means to use diplomacy. Now, if this man, Ephraim Rasool, was representing himself and he had these opinions, he had the right to them. But when you're representing a whole country, you need to be careful what you say, and you need to have diplomacy and respect for wherever you are. Now let's look at this man. The reason why they were against him going in the first place, the rest of the GNU partners, they caved eventually, like they always seem to do, is because he was very pro-Iran. And you know, Iran is like a dynamite stick to America at the moment. And he was pro-Hamas, pro-Palestinian, anti-Israel. Now, everything about that says he should not have been considered to be the diplomat that will make peace between South Africa and the United States of America. And yet they found it necessary to send him there to represent you and I and all our people. And what a mess he made. But let's see when he comes back whether they have the guts to fire him or, as they often do, to promote him as the ANC. Now, not just that, we've had aid cancelled by the United States, millions of dollars that really affect poor people and sick people and programs that help people. And it's just one thing after the other. And now it's this public expulsion of a diplomat that doesn't always happen in public view. And recently the Johannesburg Council, the famous Johannesburg Council that Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa visited, our president, because he wants to boast of it as being a great city where the G20 summit can be held, only to find out that it was in a total mess. But it's been in a total mess for a long time. So you wonder when last was the president in Johannesburg. No, he stays in Cape Town, which is run by his opposition that works, and so do many of the ministers. And so he was shocked to see the state of Johannesburg, which is directly the responsibility and traditionally of the ANC government. But no, these are the councillors of the Johannesburg, that are being paid great money, that are being paid to represent us, are not just making a mess of Johannesburg, they are also wanted to pass a resolution where they could rename Santon Drive, one of our key roads of our commerce. And they wanted to call it after, they wanted to call it the Leah, I think, Khaled Drive, which they wanted to name after a Palestinian Hamas terrorist that was responsible for hijacking a plane and was imprisoned and then released later on an exchange program. How sad would it be? Now these Johannesburg councillors want to represent Hamas and Palestine, and I think to myself, why don't they represent you and I, ordinary South Africans? Why don't they think about representing us for a change rather than their own ideologies? Now, I know that resolution apparently was shot down, but it's not the first time they've brought it up, and many of them wanted it to show strength for Palestine. What about strength for South Africa? And, Joel Pollock, which has been in the news because he is earmarked, he was an ex-South African to a lawyer, a conservative, to maybe be the ambassador of South Africa. He said that if they change that address, because the American embassy is in that road, and it would then have to have a mass terrorist Palestinian and a fighter on their letterhead. And he said it would be regrettable if South Africa did this. He was more diplomatic, and because the Americans would probably close the embassy in Johannesburg, and that would affect South African people on a negative way. And I just thought, now this is happening right now after all these things. And what do the ANC do? They still defend these people instead of taking them and correcting them and saying you are there to represent South Africa. So are the ANC going to get a mauling because they are poking the bear, literally? And they seem to not have learned their lessons because they keep doing it over and over. And I was thinking about an occurrence in the Bible when Israel were in bondage to Egypt for years and years and years. And eventually Moses rose up and he led them out. But the Bible says God, when Moses went to negotiate the release, hardened Pharaoh's heart. And I believe he hardened Pharaoh's heart so that he could punish the Egyptians for all the harm they had done to Israel over hundreds of years. And so the thought that came to my mind is God hardening the ANC, and namely Cyril Ramaphosa, until they really commit political suicide and they are mauled by the bear of the United States? Is God hardening their heart? But not just that. Is He doing it to break their power and to make an end to their rule over South Africa and all the foolishness and the foolish decisions they have made in the past? This is an interesting occurrence. And interesting, I think it was in 2004, the famous Jacob Zuma made a statement that the ANC would rule until Jesus came. I think he repeated it in 2014 and 15 as well. And, he used that biblical statement about Jesus' return and that the ANC will still be there when Jesus returns. And people would say, I think Jesus has come and He's coming to deal with the ANC government and all the things that they have said they will do and haven't done, and how they have treated their own country. Now, be this as it may, it is interesting that they made that statement in the spiritual realm, and God doesn't take lightly to when people say this. Now, I have to also say that when Jesus was on earth, there were people, His own disciples, that thought that He was going to come and release them from the burden of the Romans who were cruel. And they thought He was going to be their political leader. And in John 18:36, Jesus said to them, my kingdom is not of this world. And in John 6:15, I think it is, He said, when they wanted to grab Him and force Him to be king, when Jesus saw this, he slipped away and He went on His own to the hillside. And the reason that Jesus did this is because He was bringing to the world a revelation of a spiritual revival as their Messiah. And yes, people wanted Him to be political, and He saw the atrocities that were happening, but He was bringing hope that would one day exceed the political realm and enter into the eternal realm. And so when Jesus made this statement in Luke 18:8, He said, however, when the Son of Man comes, when He does eventually return, not to save the ANC political party, but when He comes, will He find faith on the earth? He's not going to be looking for silver and gold. He's not going to be looking for fame and success. He's going to be looking whether you and I have faith in our hearts towards Him. So I want to encourage you that Jesus is coming. And when He does come, let Him find you and I having faith in Him in our hearts. And don't be discouraged. Perhaps Jesus is hardening the heart of certain South Africans to show them what they have done to people that He loves. My name is Jack Vint. You've been watching Timeout. God really loves you. If you like this podcast, please subscribe. Otherwise, leave a comment. I'd love to read your comment. Otherwise, I'll catch you next week.